Michele Granberg here. Welcome to Positive Energy, enlightening television for the evolving soul. At some point, everyone experiences the pain of losing a loved one. And each of us ponders the age-old question, is there life after death? We want to know, do our loved ones live on, and are they okay? My guest, Roland Comtois, is an internationally acclaimed medium, channel, speaker, and best-selling author. His healing message is that love is everlasting and continues beyond this physical plane. Positive Energy starts right now. So, Roland Comtois, welcome to Positive Energy.
Thank you.
It's really
I'm glad to be here with you.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm so excited to have you on my show and to have this wonderful conversation and to introduce this to our audience.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So your words and your work really resonate for me personally as well as professionally. And I like the idea of really taking the fear and the mysticism out of the idea that we continue, the idea that we are souls, the idea that there is life after death, that we really are infinite energy. Of course we are, and that death is a transition.
Another step, another experience.
So how did you come to this? How did you get started? What led you to this work? I believe you started to develop your abilities in childhood. I know that you also lost your mother, and that those were key moments, I think, in this.
You know, it's been a 44-year process, and I'm still learning how to be connected and stay connected to that spiritual space. But when I was a kid, 10 years old, my grandmother passed away, and 3 days later, she was in my bedroom. I knew exactly what was going on. I felt this incredible energy. I saw this illumination, this light at the end of my bed. And somehow at that moment, I knew as a 10-year-old kid that she was okay. And I began to make it my business, really, to understand what happens to us. What is the next step at 10 and 15 and 17 and then through nursing school and right along to this moment of time.
Almost like it was hardwired within you.
You know, my mother said that when I was a kid, she said, oh God, there he goes again, chasing something around the room or talking to someone. You know, so it's always been a way of life for me that I would just feel this energy and need to share it. I need to experience it.
I'm sure it was unique for you in some ways, but is it also universal for children in general? Or do children sense more? They're more open to the energies, presences that are with them, but maybe that gets dismissed?
Sure, I think they are highly sensitive to energy because they don't have any filters yet. You know, as we go along our journey, someone says, don't do that, it's not right, whatever. And all these boundaries get put into place that force us to step away from who we truly are. And kids have an ability to really communicate and see things.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So you stayed open.
I did.
You just were open and continue to stay open, and here you are as an adult.
Yes.
Now you are able to express this in a much more pronounced way.
You know, I think the reality of this is one of the discoveries was, as a young child, I thought that I was the only one, or maybe I thought everybody was having these experiences, but not really until I got much older that I realized I was having these experiences and nobody else was talking about it.
It felt normal to you.
It did feel normal.
Course.
You know, my mother would look at me kind of strangely and I'd say, well, Mom, don't you see them? You know, can't you feel them? And she didn't. And she didn't have those experiences like I had.
So fast forward now, tell us about the nature of your work. In other words, what's your process in terms of how loved ones on the other side connect with you, how spirits connect with you, how you connect with them? What does that look like? I know the purple papers are signature for you.
Yes, I spend a lot of time in prayer, meditation, quietness, and feeling that energy within myself. And I know that once I feel that, it connects me to something much greater, much bigger than what's happening in that moment. And then I start to hear stories, and I write those stories on purple papers, and I have for a very long time. And then I go on the road, and I find someone who knows, we make a connection, and something amazing happens. They leave there with a purple paper or a message. But you know what I really want to share with you, Michele, is that I don't think you or anybody else needs a medium, though, because I think all of us have that ability within ourselves to make a profound and powerful connection to the afterlife. I think it's in each person. And my job is to show you that that experience still exists, that your loved one still exists.
So you are in the middle of that, but you don't necessarily need to be. You're saying we really don't need you, that we all have this ability. It's something natural, something that we're all born with. So
Yes.
what turns it off? What turns it on? If that's the right terms, what's the key? What's the ingredients that goes into all of us being able to connect with those we love?
Well, it takes work. It takes a commitment. It takes not listening to the voice of someone saying you can't do that or that does not exist. It really takes that moment of getting within yourself and listening to that inner voice that that I believe connects us to everything. And if everything exists, then our loved ones must exist there as well. And if they're there, then we can have some kind of conversation, some communication that will inspire us in some way, that will move us along in some way.
So it's not going to come through our intellect. It comes through a deeper place, our heart,
I was just
soul,
going to say it.
Our intuition.
Totally.
So if we have practices on a regular basis that move us into that deeper place, we're just going to be more available and recognize it.
It's important to sit quietly, to be in that space, to go into the heart, because the heart is really the communicator of all these things. And when you're in that space, it's very powerful and profound. You come back to who you truly are and what exists for you. It's all in you. It's all in you. It's everywhere.
So I'm sure people want to know more, like how do I do it? You teach people a little bit how to develop the ability of mediumship. And is it that you teach them meditation techniques?
Yes, that's a good question.
Or, prayer is something we can do in our own way, or connecting with our heart?
I think every student I have ever taught, I said the one thing you need to master first is silence. We live in a world where we need instant messages, we get texts, we get Facebook messages. All these things are happening very, very quickly around us.
Yeah.
And we have lost the ability to sit quietly and to be in that silent space. That space is the catalyst for that spiritual voice speaking to us and filling us with whatever it is that we need.
We're so externally preoccupied, less internally driven, and internally focused.
Yes, we
so
have to
just
go back.
That shift, that subtle shift of going within, sitting and learning, again, just how to be.
Yes, and that is the biggest task for anyone wanting to learn how to communicate with that space, is to really get within yourself and allow that voice to speak to you. I do it every day. You probably do it every day. Your viewers probably do it every day. They get into that space, and in that space is where all this amazing energy is.
So let's talk about love.
Yeah.
Let's talk about love.
Yeah, let's talk about love.
Let's do that. Because my gathering is that that's the main message that our loved ones want to convey to us, that they still love us, that they are loved, that we are loved.
Yes.
Have you found that there is sort of a main theme that our loved ones come through to convey to us when you work with people?
The main point is always that it's based in love. Even in relationships that weren't that great, it's still based in love.
Right.
Because at the end, it all comes back to love. The skeptics say, well, it's a little too lovey-dovey for me. But the fact of the matter is, it is about love. And that's what we all want to know. We all want to know, are we loved? Did they love us? Do they know I still love them? Are we still remembered? Are we still connected? And when we have these conversations, something happens. It opens up the heart and the soul of the person who's receiving the message. Can I just share a little story about this?
Please.
I was at an event recently, and there was a woman sitting in the back row, and all she wanted to do was not to be seen and to be seen. And the minute I brought about her husband, who was named David, something changed in her. And when I brought the words that I was hearing and feeling, something even greater changed within her. And by the time the message was offered to her, there was one tear coming down her face, and she came to some realization that no matter what happened between them, that no matter what happened at the time of his passing, that the love that they had, the love that they shared, was still there. It was still part of it in some way.
Right.
It was so remarkable to see her sitting there. And by the way, she lost a loved one on 9/11. So her loss, not that we should compare one loss to another, because that really isn't fair to me, but it was awful for her. But she had that moment of coming to a place of knowing that maybe he is still there, that he's still part of me. And that's what the end result is of all of these channeling and messages and moments with people.
It brings you into that feeling place.
Yes.
That you really are the catalyst for. Of course, love and loss go hand in hand in some ways,
Yes,
because
they do.
you need to have loved first, have the experience of loving someone to experience loss.
Yeah, look, I think about this with my mother's passing. I loved her incredibly, as we all do, probably our people that have gone. And if I didn't have the opportunity to love her as much as I have, that loss would not have impacted me as deeply and as greatly. But what it taught me was, wow, was I lucky? Was I incredibly lucky to have that experience in my life? It made me the man that I am. And so there's a moment of realizing all of these things when you get one tiny little message, or you have a moment from that spiritual place.
So let's expound on that a little bit and talk a little bit more about grief, because I know you do this kind of healing grief work goes hand in hand with what you do as a medium.
Yes.
We know that grief is the human experience. It's a human emotion. It's normal. It's natural. It's necessary in many ways. So what do you say to bring comfort to people when they are really in the throes of grieving? How do you bring it all together, reminding them their loved ones, even though they can't see them, are still with them? How do you help them with their grief?
Well, the first thing is I let them talk and just let them say what they need to say. And most of the time, my words aren't really as impactful as we may think they are. It's their having the opportunity to share the depth of their grief. So the first thing is really letting them say what they have to say, to be part of their grief versus walking around it and avoiding it. So we step right into it, and then we walk into that experience. Brings out a lot of emotion, but I think what the first thing that happens is they get a chance to say what they really feel. And I think that sometimes that does not happen. We don't have the opportunities to say how grief makes us feel. I remember somebody coming into the funeral line when my mother passed away and said, "Oh, what are you crying for?" I said, "Well, I'm a 50-year-old kid that lost the one person who knew everything about me, who knew everything about my existence here. And that is why I'm crying." And that was my grief and my sorrow. But when I spoke it, when I shared it, it began to ease. It began to lift a little bit. And I think that's really important.
That's a great first step. You're right, because many people are not comfortable with their own emotions or comfortable with other people's intense emotions. So just being a safe space for someone to talk and just be accepted and not be judged. We can't underestimate, the healing power of that.
Yeah, the healing power of just listening and just
listening,
holding somebody's hand.
And listening and holding someone's hand.
Can I tell you just a quick story? At another event in Connecticut, there was 50, 60 people in the room, and there was a woman sitting there, and she had waited her whole life, and she was only 25 or 26 years old, but she waited her whole life to get a message from her father. And she had never, ever expressed her grief. So I walked up to her, and I said whatever it is that I said to her. And what came out of her voice, out of her soul, was excruciating to hear. And what was so amazing, Michele, is that the audience, the people in the room, stood up and put their arms around that kid. That was the power of that moment. That's the power of love. And so here, for the first time, of this young woman who desperately missed her father, had a chance to release this anguish and then to receive what this audience did for her. I will never forget her.
Right.
I will never forget her.
How beautiful. What a wonderful experience to be able to witness and really be a part of, and to see the power of the collective.
Oh my God.
When everybody is aligned.
It was amazing
in
to
one
see.
mindset, and everybody's hearts are open, and it really makes us realize how united and how similar we all are
that is
in
amazing.
our experiences.
That's right. It's so true. It was so amazing to see them just all stand united, and my heart opened to humanity on that day even more than it ever had been, because people just stretched across their own grief and their own pain to be of support.
I love when the best in us comes forward.
Yes.
So
yes.
you know and have learned a lot about the afterlife.
Yes.
When you first started, or even now, what sort of surprised you the most, and what misconceptions would you like the most to clear up for people?
That's a great, yeah.
Because I know there are misconceptions about the afterlife or assumptions, but what have you learned and what can you share?
Well, I had a near-death experience 30 years ago, which prompted all of these things. And the thing that was most profound was that there wasn't a line for certain religious people. We're all in the same place. You know, there wasn't, you go this way for one thing.
That's your line.
Yeah.
Your line.
Yeah.
You're on the wrong line.
Yeah, right,
No.
right. You
No.
know, it was just this idea that, oh my God, we really are one. There is this sense of us, the collective, as you mentioned a moment ago, the oneness that was so powerful. And that was such an amazing experience. So, you know, the idea that, you know, certain groups go in one direction, the rest of us go in another direction.
Yeah.
Gone. It does not exist that way. You know, it was just that there was a oneness and a sense of unity that should exist here. You know, one of the greatest lessons of all, even beyond that, was that we can bring, and this was the most profound moment, we can bring that heavenly energy or that divine energy or that holy energy or that sacred energy here, right now.
Right.
We can bring it here. We can remember that experience. That's what happens when someone gets a message. They remember the love they shared, and it gives them the inspiration to take the step they need to take. You know, often I say to people, I'm really not in the business of talking to dead people. I'm in the business of talking to the living so that you can live.
It's about living.
Yeah, it is about living. It's nothing more than living. We make it much more complicated. It's really a simple process.
And very finite we make it.
Yeah, very true. Very true. But it is about living, and that's the lesson and the experience from that the near-death experience, the mediumship, the messages, is that we are supposed to live. Right. We live with what we have, and we do the best we can. And we live positively, as your show says. We live with that positive energy. And you can even get there when someone passes on. You can still move through your grief and come back to that space.
So maybe one of the misconceptions that you're wanting to dispel is that there is such a huge difference. There isn't such a huge difference between here and there.
Right.
Maybe there really isn't a here and a there. Maybe it is just one field or one vibration. It is just about showing up in one form or another. Have you heard that from those who are no longer in their physical form, in their physical bodies?
Well, I can tell you that when I had that experience 30 years ago, it was just there. There was this sense of ascending and moving and energy. But when I finally got wherever I was going, I was there anyway. It was like it was already there. It was all here. It's present. Yeah. All we have to do is tap into that energy, and that's how it goes.
Is it more like a dial, like kind of like clicking into a radio dial? And I always kind of think of it that way. I don't know why.
You know, that's interesting. I've always told the story that, you know, the mediumship is like having, in the old days, I had a 1994 Pontiac Bonneville. It was velour seats, red car, gorgeous car, Michele, right? I turned the car on, and this antenna would come out from the back trunk somewhere, and all of a sudden I was hearing all the radio stations. Everything was accessible to me. You know, I think there's a similarity to that the minute we get into that space, all of it is accessible to us, even our loved ones that have passed on.
I love that. That makes it much more, you can think about it a little bit more, and organize it in your mind a little bit more, that it's not such a quantum leap.
Yes.
Here and there, or people always look up when they say heaven.
I know.
And I think that's one of those misconceptions as well, that we go to a heavenly place. Again, I think it's just all here.
Yes. You know, heaven is here. It's here. Heaven is in the eyes of my 24-year-old daughter. It's in the love of my friends. It's in the dogs that greet me when I come home. It's in the obstacles of my life and the joyful moments of my life. It's everywhere, and it's in everything.
Yeah. That's good. So let's ground this even a little bit more from this wonderful esoteric conversation that I love into how does truly believing in an afterlife, and that everything is really about love, and that we don't aren't really ever separate. How can that, in a practical, measurable way, impact our lives positively?
Well, look, we have an opportunity here, no matter what your experiences are, to step back into that space of love. You know, a few months ago, I did a service at a church. Every year, I get asked to do a Christmas sermons kind of thing. I go, a couple of hundred people show up, and at the middle of this service, I said, "Stop, everyone, get out your cell phones. And right now, I want you to call somebody and tell them how much you really love them. I don't want you to text it. I don't want you to send it in an email. I want you to pick that phone up." And so all of a sudden, people are taking their phones out, and a room of 200 people, that you can hear all these little tiny whispers of people saying, you know, I just want to, and I didn't hear all the conversations, but again, a young woman, she was probably 20-something years old, came up to me and said this. She said, "I want to say something to you." She said, "You know what you just did for me?" And I said, "I don't know. I asked you to call someone and tell them you love them and to share your emotion, to bring everything to the present moment, right?" She said, "I called my father. I haven't talked to him in 10 years. I was afraid to tell him that I loved him or what I felt." And she said, "You're not going to believe this. He said, 'I love you back.'" It's about being here in this moment, through our grief, through our loss, through our joys, through everything, and being present in our lives. I know it's a bit cliched. We say present all the time, but it really is being here, right here in this moment.
And that's, I guess, the beauty or the message or the gift in loss and in death, that it provides contrast. It provides what seems like the opposite for us. It reminds us about what's important.
Yes.
And you're right, it's easy for us to say, well, of course I love my loved ones. And sure, I tell them, or I write it in a note, but do we really tell them and be present and tell them? So
what's the action behind the words? What are you doing to give those words color and energy and vibration? What are you doing to expand that and bring it all to the present moment? Can I just share another story with you? My mother, just before she passed, I walked into her rehab room and she was in a glow. I've never seen this woman in a glow before. And she had this light around her, and I thought, okay, something's happening. And she said, "Roland," and she went like this, "Roland, you're not a nut," she said. She said, "They all came to me last night, and you were right. It is about love." And she told me this very grand story of how her family that she had longed for years and years and years were around her. And they said to her, they said, "You know what, I don't want you to worry when I pass," she says. And I'm getting emotional telling you this. "I don't want you to worry," she says. "Don't want you to worry about it." She said, "Because just before I go, they're going to take my hand and they're going to show me where I need to go next. And they're all going to stand around me and you won't have to take care of me anymore." So she said, "What are you going to do when I'm gone?" I said, "I have no idea, Mom. You never left before. I have no idea what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do everything I can to love you, to love my sister, to love my life. I'm going to do everything in my power to love everything about who I am and where I am." And she said, "That's all I can ask." And a few days later, in the quietness of my arms, she passed away. I am certain, I am so certain, Michele, that she took all that love, all those energies, all those memories that we've collected over the years, and took them with her on her journey. Because somewhere in the next place, somewhere beyond here, our paths will cross again, and all that pain that existed will no longer be present. What will be present is all that love and that energy and the joy that we've felt in our lives together.
That's a beautiful message. The best way to honor or demonstrate our love for our loved ones, those who are with us now and not here in our physical form, is to live our lives fully and participate in our lives and live through love. I mean,
that's the way it is. I've been doing this for 40 years. It started when I was 10. I'm in my 50s. I've never heard the other side say to me, "Be depressed.
Right.
Don't eat supper. Don't go to work.
Make your bed."
Make your bed. Yeah, make your bed. They say, live, love. And if you get a little down, it's okay that you get a little down. It's part of the human experience. It's part of the experience when you love someone, that you experience that loss and grief. And my mother was a great teacher for me. And those last moments of her life, telling me exactly what I needed to hear.
Beautiful.
It was very beautiful. It was very
and she's
beautiful.
still a partner with you because obviously I'm sure she's teaching right alongside you. And sharing and giving.
Yeah, she is. She is. And that's the beautiful part.
So I'm sure hearing your words, people will want to reach out to you.
Yes.
How can they find you on the internet? And give us the names of your books.
Sure. You can find me at rolandcomtois.net, and it's spelled COMTOIS, rolandcomtois.net. And my first book is called And Then There Was Heaven, A Journey of Hope and Love. And my second book is 16 Minutes. When one breath ends, another begins.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So you're going to be at my center.
Yes,
even though this will probably air after that.
Yes,
Regardless, I'm thrilled as well that you're going to be holding a mediumship gallery at my center, and certainly hope that will continue.
I hope so.
Is there a final message that you'd like to sort of channel or offer to our audience, a message of hope for them today?
Well, what I want to say to you is not to lose sight of the love that you've started. And in the dark days and the heavy days, go back inside somewhere, and find that memory where you found that love that you've had with each other, and hold on to that, because that will move you through your grief and your loss and somehow give you the encouragement. So take one step at a time, go easy on yourself, allow those memories of love to come back when the time is right, and then take your next step. And if you need help, ask for help.
There's help available.
Because we're in this together. We are in this experience together. Thank you.
Beautiful message, Roland Comtois. Thank you for being on Positive Energy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I trust you found hope and comfort from this show, and you truly believe that your loved ones are thriving on the other side and they send their love. Let me know what you thought about this show. Thank you for watching. Remember to nurture your soul, be kind to one another, and join me next time right here on Positive Energy.